Sir, thank you so much for being here. Your time is extremely valued, and we appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. So, first of all, I want to issue our greatest sympathy for the loss of your daughter. I mean, it's absolutely horrific. Uh, do you believe that that attack was targeted at you as well?
It seems so. We could never know for sure. But in spite that my daughter was very patriotic and shared absolutely my own vision, but she was known in Russia. She was very brilliant, very beautiful, and she was a rising star. But I sincerely cannot imagine that she deserved to be killed by what she has done. And it seems, according to inquiry in Russia, that the enemy wanted to kill myself, to kill me. And now there are some reports in global press, including in the United States and Washington Post, New York Times, that CIA knew that the Ukraine terrorists wanted to kill myself for my position, and they say, the Americans say, they were against that. But who knows what is done behind the curtain of the special services? Nobody knows for sure. So it is obvious that Ukrainians accomplished this horrible act against innocent young girl, and or against myself. You're absolutely right. I have no position in Putin's Russia, no official position. I have academic position. I have published much more than 20 books. 20 books, I think they are translated into the English. But I have written more than 70 books in different languages, in Russian, first of all, but they are translated in many other languages. So maybe at the same time, I have no position in Putin's government. I agree and I support the reunification with Crimea, with Eastern Ukrainian territories, but I never influenced in no way the Putin's decision to start special military operation. So from all logical, reasonable level, to kill someone, or worse than that, to kill someone's daughter in front of the eyes of the father, it is serious crime, I think, against the thought. Because, for example, I was presented in Amsterdam speaking with Bernard-Henri Lévy, exchanging very opposite views concerning world politics, philosophy, metaphysics, global trends. So the process and in the change of the world order, that is, it is how you normally should treat the people with opposite view. So that is confrontation of the ideas. For example, Bernard-Henri Lévy invited to kill Turks in favor of Kurds, to kill Afghan Taliban in favor of some group in Afghanistan, to kill Assad in favor of rebels in Syria. So, but no one, not in Russia, for example, or in other countries, has idea to kill him for his words, and that is something I think that exceeds the laws of relations between societies. I never participated in the military operations, nowhere. neither in Georgia nor in Ukraine, I can have my geopolitical, philosophical, metaphysical, historical views, and I can stand for them. I can defend them. I could receive the theoretical blows and polemics and so on. I was totally cancelled from any platform, from Amazon, from Facebook, from Google, from YouTube. The globalists destroyed. They have cancelled all my accounts. Now only in Twitter and new platform X.com, Elon Musk has changed that. He has returned my account in X.com, but before that I was totally banished from any kind of access to the public, and anybody in academical milieu who tried to explore my views was threatened to not to do it, because I was considered to, and I am still considered to be very dangerous, and that I could understand. But if you start to kill the people for the things they think, for that, I think that is totally new rule in dealing with philosophers, with thinkers, and I think that is not only Ukrainian initiative, because I was appointed a kind of target by all these lies directed against myself, that I am brain of Putin, that I'm his advisor, that I advised to him to invade Ukraine, to make reunification with Crimea, and all the other things. I'm just the thinker. Maybe in many, I support Putin. I could not deny it. I think that we are on the same wave of the historic being of our civilization, but that is a coincidence of the positions of vision and not direct influence. So I think that is the assassination of my daughter, that I profoundly laughed and laugh now. It was something that transcends any kind of measure. The ancient Greeks called that hubris. Hubris, that is Greek word. When you exceed all kinds of measures, all limits, so that you are making something that is beyond any kind of human behavior. So you violate the norm of polemics, of treating the enemy, and so on. But it is just my clarifications.
Yeah. I have often referred to the American global empire, our fake government, as the empire of lies. I've called them a murderous regime. I've talked about them being warmongers. We have on our show exposed the way that we, overthrew via coup d'etat, violent coup d'etat, this democratically elected administration in 2014. I have said that the State Department and our own Pentagon and the deep state are responsible for this war in Ukraine, and now we're seeing the invasion of Israel. We'll get to that later. We'll get to the conflict in Israel versus Gaza later. But I'd like to ask you, if you were to say who's responsible for what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, did Vladimir Putin just wake up one day and decide to be some war criminal?
So I think that the situation, we need to put the situation in the context, in the geopolitical context. So there is a kind of classical geopolitical vision exposed in the early writings of Halford John Mackinder, British founder of geopolitics, developed by Nicholas Speakman, and brought to the clear explanation by Zbigniew Brzezinski, and accepted by Germans, the German geopoliticians, and somehow by Russian, that classical geopolitics presents the world as the fight between sea power and land power from the beginning of Mackinder's writings. So in that vision, that proves to be something that explains better than anything else the historical development of 20th century, maybe 19th century as well, and the beginning of the 21st century. This classical vision of geopolitics is based on the eternal war of sea power, represented by Anglo-Saxon world, British Empire, and after that by United States. When United States has abandoned its own concentration on itself, isolationist, patriotic politics, and entered the global politics, taking for itself the mission of the British Empire to conquer the world, to install everywhere so-called democratic ideals and realities. That is the name of the second book of Mackinder. So that was classical geopolitics. And if we consider what has happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, when the land power was defeated and somehow was recognized its failure to compete with sea power. After that came so-called unipolar moment. So that was the victory of the sea power over land power, and that was a kind of manifestation of this globalist regime in the West, not only United States, because there are networks, liberal, progressist, so-called liberal democratic networks of global on global level, and they penetrate any society. We had in Russia in the 90s such people. I have met in China, in India, everywhere, in Arab worlds, in Africa. So that was the kind of global system of sea power that has totally won the adversary, the enemy. And that was explained and presented in the book of Francis Fukuyama, The End of the History. The end of the history, it is the end of the war between continents, between sea power and land power, and the triumph and the final and decisive, as Fukuyama insisted, victory of the sea power. And that is precisely unipolar moment, unipolarity, and coming to power, this globalist regime represented in Republican strategy led by neoconservatives, in the case of Bush, or the same neoconservatives and globalists with Bill Clinton, with Obama, so or with Biden. So that is the same, exactly the same. And this unipolarism has manifested this globalist elite, supranational, not American elite. That is not only, we don't speak about American people. The American people is out of the question. The American people has nothing to do with all that. But I think the American politician, American administration, American state has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do, because American state has its own history, its own place. And the last time we have seen American state, that was in Trump's time. So that was America as the state. But this American state or has nothing to do with globalist project, because globalist project is not in favor of America. It is in favor of creation of global government, and imposing this sea power on all the nations, starting from American people, American nation, European nation. And but what is interesting, that against that, with coming to power of Mr. Putin, began a kind of reaction. And geopolitically speaking, that was revival of the land power of Eurasia. That is why I'm calling my movement Eurasian movement, the movement of restoration of the sovereignty of continental mass of Eurasia, Russia and peoples and countries united with us historically. But interesting that was not restoration of bipolar system as it was seen during classical geopolitical era time. Now new poles appeared. Chinese pole, independent from us, independent from the West. The India Islamic pole is clearly manifesting itself. African pole, that Africa affirms herself more and more clearly. Latin America, American pole. So, and there is a kind of global confrontation, not between the West and the East, between the United States and Russia, but between unipolarity and emerging multipolarity. Unipolarity, that means the rule of globalist elite in the West, based on the radically left liberal ideology with cultural Marxism as kind of cultural superstructure, based on the rule of global big finance, big pharma, big capital. That is unholy alliance between cultural Marxism and the big monopoly of transnational corporations. That was a kind of one power, and against these global civilization emerged new poles, and that was the reason of the conflict in Ukraine. So Ukraine is not the problem between us and Ukrainians. Ukrainians were used in order to attack us. There was installed artificially Nazi regime with ultra-nationalist attitude, with Russia phobia, and that was used against us in order to stop this creation and affirmation, this emergence of the Russia as new pole. But at the same time, the trade war with China began. And now, in situation in Middle East, in Gaza and Israel, there is the other front of the same confrontation between unipolarity and Islamic pole this time, because Islamic pole is uniting in favor of Palestine, and globalists of the West, they sided uniquely with Israel. So outside of all national interests, so no national interests, American interests are really involved. More than that, during this confrontation between Palestine, between Hamas and Israel, the American politics in the Middle East is totally abandoned, totally destroyed, totally torn apart. So nothing left of this strategy of pacification of the region. So I think that the hatred against Americans in Islamic world has reached the level of unprecedented level, because that is the fight between two world orders, the world order of unipolarity that globalists try desperately to save, to continue to preserve, and the emerging multipolar world order with Russia only one of poles. Russia is not the second, the only opponent of this unipolarity. Russia is one of the other civilizations fighting for reacquiring and defending their sovereignties. So that is how I consider the Russian-Ukrainian confrontation and war, how I consider the confrontation between Palestine, Hamas, and Israel. So it is not just regional conflicts. It is something greater, something more important. That is the emergence of two alternative world orders that they are confronting now.
And you mentioned the global elites, and you mentioned this control structure and this one world governance. It appears to us here that Vladimir Putin, and I've been called all kinds of names for this, may be one of the only men on the face of the planet standing between what's left of this free world and whatever this one world governance is that's rapidly approaching. Do you agree with that assessment?
So maybe I agree. I generally agree, but I think in many ways he is doing like that in spite of himself. So when he came to power, he was really willing to integrate Russia in the greater Europe, from Lisbon to Vladivostok. He wanted to make alliance against Islamic terrorism with United States, with Bush. So he was ready to be part of the global structure. He had nothing against the West, but he wanted Russia participating in this concert of the states of the Western as well and other states, conserving and reaffirming Russian sovereignty. He is realist in international relations, and little by little hurting against confronting with the globalist agenda that had and has nothing to do with realist interests of Western nations. He was obliged to make a challenge to global system. He wants to be part of the global system on the under one condition: to conserve Russian sovereignty and possibility to act freely on the global scale.
So he put the interests of the Russian people above the interests of anybody else, is what you're saying. He's a Russian nationalist, and he's an Orthodox Christian, and he favors his country and puts his country first. That's what you're basically saying.
Absolutely, but that is normal for any country. That is normal for American strategy. That is,
but it's not normal for the America of today. All due respect, Mr. Douguine,
yes,
the America of today will sell its people right down the river and murder them and kill them, and then go bomb, foreign countries that mean nothing to our national security or sovereignty, kill millions of people, spend trillions of dollars. There's a global force behind this. Who is it?
Exactly. But Putin came to this position to fight for sovereignty of Russia against this attack, assault of globalists, in spite of himself. He was very peaceful. He was very tolerant. He was very pro-Western in the beginning, and that is not my case. I always suspected that the globalist regime on the top of the West would go. That's exactly the way it went. So I have seen that from the beginning, and Putin has arrived to the same, more or less the same position by his experience, of the head of the state, and step by step he was put in the position of, here I agree totally with you, of defender of the principle of the realism, of the national interest, of the sovereignty, of the plurality of the systems of values. So that is precisely democracy on the global level. It is not a totalitarian, ideological, imposing, prescriptive.
We've been spreading democracy, as you know, Mr. Douguine, all over the place for decades. We spread democracy in Iraq. We spread democracy in Afghanistan. We spread it in Libya and in Syria. What did that equate to? We killed millions of people.
That is new understanding of liberalism as well. For example, the old liberals they thought that you are free to be or whoever you want. But now new liberalism, new democracy consists in the completely different attitude. You are free to be liberal. Like us, exactly. You are not free not to be liberal, and you are not free to be liberal in some different aspects, in some different way than us. So that is pure totalitarianism. That is not democracy in any historical meaning. That is new kind of totalitarian attitude, and that is called democracy still, or liberalism, and they pretend to fight against authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, being themselves radically totalitarian.